Betty and being Mary Jane and, in the movie Kick-Ass. But again, we all know Omari Hardwick from his great portrayal as James Ghost St. Patrick in the TV series called Power. Lake Bell, she plays Kate, and she has been in Boston Legal, and she was also in a movie called A Good Old Fashioned Orgy. I didn't see that. If you saw that, well, then you might know who she is. I did not know that she did animated voices as well. She's been on that TV show called BoJack Horseman, which is interesting on Adult Swim. And then last but not least, our other major character is John Bernthal. Man, he plays Frank Shotgun. Now, John is one of these guys who's like a great character actor. You've seen him in everything, but he really hasn't had any type of really lead roles except for when he was the Punisher as Frank Castle on the Netflix, the Marvel series. But he was in The Wolf of Wall Street. He was the guy that got the Quaaludes, the muscle guy. And he was also in the Peanut Butter Falcon, and in Ford versus Ferrari, he was Lee Iacocca. But most people probably recognize John Bernthal from the Walking Dead series as Shane Walsh. So you have a very well fleshed out, very prominent selection of actors here who did a great job in a very tense, tightly wound gangster film. So beginning off, when we look at some of the characters, Nikolaj plays Jacob, and he plays Money. And I'll explain why. I think Jacob and Money are two different people. And his character goes through a lot of changes because the film opens up with Nikolaj playing Jacob, who's living his life as a stockbroker, an investment banker, a family man who loves his life, loves his wife, loves his kids. But it's suddenly changed when a bad decision lands him in jail. So then when he goes into jail, he has to figure out how to survive. And that lands him in the company of the Aryan Nation. And he finds himself committing even more crimes just to survive. And then ultimately, Jacob transforms into Money, who is now this hardened criminal with his only soft spot being the love for his family. And by the end of the movie, you're not quite sure who exists. Is it Jacob or is it Money? Now, Frank Shotgun, Frank, a.k.a. Shotgun, he meets Jacob while he's in jail. And when we first meet him, Shotgun's a tough guy, but as his story develops, you find out what kind of man he really is. And that's just a guy who's desperate and who's willing to risk everything that he's ever done just to see his girlfriend and his child again, which I think a lot of people would do. Going back to my first movie about being a snitch, trying to stay alive. The drugs and the lifestyle have taken their toll on Shotgun, and the story ends with him losing his grip on his life and his circumstances. Now, Kutcher is the cop who handles Money's parole, and he's a tough, hard-nosed, disciplined guy who's not easily shaken by his job, especially when it comes to dealing with hardcore criminals. But as he's handling Money, we do kind of see this kind of empathetic side to him as he tries to understand his latest charge. Kutcher doesn't change much, but we do see a side of him that tries to actually walk a mile in another man's shoes and actually empathize with their circumstances. The dialogue in this movie is absolutely perfect. It rings true to the lifestyle, and to me, the way it's written, the words and all the scenes act twofold. In one way, they help to advance the story, but in the other way, they really help provide exposition to the characters involved. So when they speak, you get a better understanding as to who they are, the decisions they make, and why they make those decisions. It's almost like listening to a Waze, like one of those like apps that provide directions. The dialogue really and truly gives you a roadmap to the direction of the film story and ultimately its final destination. Now, whether it's true to the game or not, I will say this. I really appreciate the fact that the writer and the director did not use a single racial epitaph while telling this great story. I mean, here you have the Aryan Nation in the prison yard with black prisoners and Hispanic prisoners, and nobody drops the N-word. They don't use any Spanish derogatory terms, nothing. They really just focused on telling the story without getting into the whole racial back and forth, trying to quote unquote keep it real. So I'm really happy that did not rear its ugly head, which would have, to me personally, would have marred an otherwise great story. Now, this story is about a man who is willing to do anything and everything to provide for his family. It's almost like Walter White, like that, like in the whole Breaking Bad. And you do find some slight parallels in this, because the basic story really revolves around money versus Jacob. Okay. Externally, he's given a whole bunch of tasks that, from the Aryan Brotherhood in order for him to earn money and protect himself. And each time he does these things, he finds himself being, further, he leaves Jacob further and further behind. And he tries his best to deal with his pain throughout the film, as he must abandon his family in order to keep them safe. And it's a very, very key and important storyline. Internally, I think Jacob is looking for redemption for his sins. I think he understands why he's in jail, and he's paying for the decision that he made that landed him there, and he feels that he has to atone for it. It's kind of what drives him. But what also drives him is the love for his son, and these are key aspects into understanding his motivations as to why he makes the decisions that he makes throughout the entire movie. Now, from a plot type, I thought it was kind of along the lines of an institutionalized kind of plot story, where he is constantly conflicted by putting his responsibilities and duties to the Aryan nation ahead of his own family. And yet that all that he does for his family and all the positive aspects of that the Aryan nation does to provide with him, it's got to be paid for with blood. Yes, the Aryan nation protects him, and they make sure that he's not killed, and they make sure that his family's watched on the outside. But on the flip side of it, he belonged to the nation. So it's kind of weird that he's kind of caught in this, never-ending cycle of servitude for this violent gang. Now, the cons of it all is that each time he commits these crimes, he drifts further and further away from who he used to be. And like I said, that's ultimately where the whole transformative theme comes from, of him no longer being Jacob and now all of a sudden becoming money. Now, thematically, I thought that there was definitely a redemption theme in this movie, primarily focused on the crime that he committed that kind of put him in jail, and also the crime for letting his family down. It's like when he's committing these crimes, he realizes he's never going to be the same guy again. And he never really truly shakes the guilt for what has occurred. And it kind of drives him internally. And it's that kind of guilt that he hopes that he doesn't pass on to his son. And that's, again, it's very key that you watch his interaction between him and his boy. Transformatively, he had to turn into money in order to survive. Okay, and this transformation exemplifies changes that we all go through in life. I think through the course of anybody's career, whether it's professionally or even privately, we all kind of change our personalities and our characters just to kind of fit in wherever we're at. And so luckily, most of us don't have to commit any major crimes. We just have to deal with some annoying colleagues or family members. But man, this guy really goes through a transformative stage in order just to get through the day-to-day processes of being in jail, and also when he gets out of jail. Another theme I thought that this movie highlighted on was sacrifice. This guy gave his life so that his son and his wife could have one. He knew that whether he was in prison for life or even coming out of prison, he was not going to be the same. And as he mentions in the film, he does not want the stink of his life on his own child. So he sacrificed his life so that so he could earn money for them, understanding that he was never going to be able to really truly escape the Aryan nation. It's the ultimate, giving your life for another. And that's what turned Jacob into money. Now, this happened over the course of a film that goes for a full 121 minutes. In the first act, you see the crime, you see kind of Jacob's lifestyle and the crime that is committed. In the second act, you begin to see Jacob's transformation into money, where in order to survive, he has to join the Brotherhood. In the second half of the film, life becomes very, very complicated as his role within the Brotherhood. He's questioned, but his motives are being questioned as to who he is and what he's all about and what he owes. And then in the third act, Money finally gets a chance to confront the head of the Aryan nation with a chance to decide his own destiny and his own fate. Now, this movie was directed by Rick Roman and written by Rick Roman, who was involved in, Angel Has Fallen and, That Which I Love Destroys Me, and he was in Snitch and Felon. So he's done a lot of these kind of prison kind of films. And the way he shot this film is with nothing but true intensity. Each moment you wonder what is going to happen next. The visuals and the costumes and the tattoos pull you into that lifestyle, the Aryan nation and prison life. The sounds to me that were most key I mean, to me, excuse me, not the sounds. The sound of the film is very key because a lot of these characters, they talk in these hushed tones. They talk quiet. They whisper. They say things very intensely like this. So it's like you really got to turn the volume up and pay attention, or watch it with subtitles. Okay, it is cool because it's very clear that in this lifestyle, these guys don't want you to hear what they're saying. The performances by all the characters don't seem forced. Nobody seems over the top. I never found myself questioning if these are not accurate portrayals of gang members or cops. The mood of the film is very ominous, which brings out great storytelling as you wonder what's going to happen from scene to scene. And the editing is very well placed with flashbacks that are interwoven into the narrative, which give it great exposition. Not any real groundbreaking camera angles when it comes to the cinematography, but just the way the story is shot, it's absolutely fantastic. Now, what worked in this film, extremely strong tension, great story of a transformative life of sacrifice and redemption and all these different types of themes interwoven into it. What didn't work was, again, like the other two stories, prison stories, when you get out, they seem to be very linear. It's just, there's no real plot twist of it at all. Now, it is rated R because of the on-screen deaths and a lot of negative language. There really is no sex in this movie, so you're okay if watching it with the kids. And as far as the unconvincing possibilities, man, everything seemed to be very, very convincing to me. IMDb gave it a very, very high 7.3. Rotten Tomatoes only gave it a 69. I guess they didn't like the way the story kind of played itself out. But the audience score was a very, very strong 80. Myself, personally, with the Cinema and Cocktails remote rating, I gave it a 4 remotes out of 5. I thought that film critic Philip Delsman said it best. Imagine Andy Dufresne embarking on a hyper-violent gangland crime spree instead of staying true to his heart, and you've got the premise for this thriller about corrosive power of prison. I can't say any better than that. And as the film progresses, you kind of get this idea where you kind of know where it's headed, and you have an idea how it's going to end. And it can be somewhat of a disturbing watch as you see this man go through these changes. But I thought that good old Nikolaj did a great job. Jamie Lannister did a kick-ass job of really bringing this character Money to life. And you do feel empathy for him as the movie goes along, because you see what he has to give up just to make it. And you see what he has to become just to make it. So as you kind of get towards the end of Shot Caller, you definitely get appreciation for not only what people have to go through when they get involved in prison life, but also what they have to do just to be able to survive. Okay, so this one was easy. This is not a drink movie. This is a high alcohol beer movie. Okay, so if you can find a high alcohol beer and watch it, when I'm sitting there watching a bunch of guys from the Aryan Nation and from the Latino gangs and from the black gangs fight it out in prison and the stuff that they're doing on the street, I'm thinking to myself, none of these dudes are sitting down for some highfalutin cocktail. These guys are cracking beers and they're slamming them back. So if you can find Saint the Bismarck by Brewdog, or Black Damnation by the Struce Brewers, or if you can find an Armageddon by Brewmeister, man, knock yourself out. Any high alcohol content beer. Don't get any macro beer, not like a Budweiser or a Miller Lite or something like that, man. Go in there and say, what's your highest content of alcohol type of beer that you may have? Like, and I don't mean like Steel Reserve or, St. Ides. That's that malt liquor stuff. Find a good high alcohol content beer. Crack that bad boy open, man, and sit back and relax. This is an intense movie that requires just beer drinking. No sweet, fruity drinks. Only a beer. Because you know what beer does? You probably heard the phrase beer goggles or beer muscles. Exactly. Beer can transform people slowly but surely. And that's exactly what we see in this movie as we watch Jacob transform slowly but surely into money and become the ultimate shot caller. And episode 20 is finally in the books, man. Listen, my apologies. I wish it could have been more fanfare, excitement, or possibly an interview or something. My fault for not getting this out sooner, man. Listen,